Okay, so as soon as I left, I got this text message from my wife after we recorded the first episode of this still yet to be named podcast. And I do want to tell you this, the first thing that she said was exactly what I said. Just listen to this. It's about your voice.
Okay, number one, you guys sound amazing. And I was thinking, golly, he's got a radio voice, like right before you said that. So it was like I was able to kind of know what you were going to say.
All right. Now, after she said that, laughed a little bit. This is my wife, Beth, by the way. She's fabulous and always shoots very straight. In fact, today I'm going to tell you a concept that really using her language. All right. So here's what she said after she gave you that shout out about my comment about the dishes and me never doing the dishes. Okay, so here it is.
You put yourself in it right here.
I got to the part where you're like, I don't do dishes because, and I was like, I cannot wait to see how he finishes this sentence. And then you go, because I don't do them right. Wait. I'm so confused right now. I'm so confused. And then I was thinking about the part of my course where I was like, we don't have to have everything figured out, and we don't have to have things perfect, but we do need to be honest. So I'm going to teach you how to do the dishes, because I would have done this a long time ago had I realized that the real issue here was you didn't know how to do them right, because I don't even care if you do them wrong. Like, that would be okay with me.
Okay, can you relate to that?
Absolutely. I told you this before we started recording. For me, it's not. I'm her when it comes to the dishes. Okay, I'm really particular. It's Tetris. I've got to stack them right. There is a particular way.
Well, you do the dishes.
I do the dishes. Well, okay. So we have a process.
Okay,
the kids unload the dishes.
So would Amber, if she sent a text right now, would she agree with that? Or would she say, you need to tell the most honest version of that story?
No, she does. She has stopped attempting to load the dishwasher because she doesn't do it right.
What? Okay. So
I like to load the dishwasher.
All right.
So we have a process. The kids unload it. I reload it.
You load it.
Yeah.
Okay.
She does. We split the cooking, but I don't know. I've taken over that.
Since you got the grill.
Yeah, no, I've got the Blackstone. The Blackstone works nice.
Does grilling count as cooking?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I use our grill every time that Beth says, "Hey, will you light up the grill?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, of course, I'll light up the grill right now." But I don't know that I consider it cooking because the cleanup is so much less.
Oh, it is.
You just scrub it.
You scrape that bad boy down, put it in the trap, and it's done.
It's over.
Yeah.
Finished.
I'm a fan.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the reason why. Now, granted, I'm always going to do a lot of the seasoning and the olive oil and stuff like that. So cleaning that part of it up and putting everything back.
Yeah.
And then having the different tray for the raw meat. And you got to clean that properly with the disinfectant and everything, not just the regular dish soap. So I guess I have set myself up for a little extra cleanup, but it's still nowhere near as bad as cooking in the kitchen.
Yeah, we don't do that. I just leave it. It's a seasoned grill.
That's right.
I mean, it is seasoned for the last 100 grills that we did. It's like you're getting the cumulative effect of all of that.
It's so amazing.
Yeah.
It's so amazing like that.
All right. Well, so I got to shift gears because the point of the podcast is not to talk about grilling or cooking. I did want to set it up and play that clip that Beth sent, just that voice text though, because the topic I'm going to discuss today is really going to build on previous episode, and this whole title, The Land in Between, that's really something that phrase I pulled from her so many times in life. And this is where I think people that are listening, so you're listening right now, you might be able to relate to, here's a word too, liminal space. L-I-M-I-N-A-L. Liminal. It really means you're kind of in limbo, like you're walking from one thing into the next. You haven't completely left the old and you're not yet in the new. You're just kind of stuck in the middle. You're really in this land in between. You're somewhere between the past and in the present moment. You're not really fully walked into what you perceive as your potential. You're just kind of you're there. I mean, they even have that phrase in politics when a president or any other elected official has gone out of office, but they're not yet retired or stepped to the next thing.
Right.
They're just called a lame duck. You kind of have these lame duck seasons of life where you're not to the next thing. You're still kind of held up. That guy's still in office.
And sometimes perceived as going through the motions.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, and it can be. And that's what we want to talk about a little bit today as it relates to moving forward. You know, you go into the Bible, there is this episode where people do seem like they are in this no man's land. And it's right after the book of Exodus, or it's right in the book of Exodus, right after the Exodus event. The children of Israel, all those plagues, they walk through the Red Sea, and then all of a sudden they're in this wilderness. Now, the wilderness was supposed to be, it seems, like this maybe 40 to 50 day run, it seems. I mean, we're just kind of guessing looking back on the timeline, but God's goal was originally for them to move through the wilderness, so that they had to go through it for sure. You can't just skip the wilderness, through the wilderness and then into the promised land. So they're leaving the past of Egypt. They're going to go through the wilderness into the promised land. And there's this great phrase in Exodus 13, 17 through 18. It says that when they left the Red Sea, God did not lead them the most direct route. There were lessons they needed to learn in the wilderness. They weren't skilled at war, so when they were in Egypt, all the Egyptians were fighting. So if they saw opposition when they got into the promised land, they would have probably cowered and backed down. They did not really at that point know about God's provision, His presence, and power. They'd seen the plagues, but that was a very late event. They'd been slaves for 400 years. And so they needed to learn all of that, and the way they were going to learn and acquire that knowledge was going through that wilderness. And so the phrase there is, when they left Egypt, God took them, again, catch the phrase, the long way. So the land in between for them was long. And while they're in that space, there are all these questions, all these doubts, all these frustrations. And you're listening, maybe you can relate to that, where you think, I'm in no man's land. The children of Israel even said over and over, slavery was better. And they would envision themselves, oh, how much better it was when we had all this we could eat and all these, leeks and cucumbers and all of this just bounty and provision, which was not true. They did not have any of that. Does that make sense?
Well, it's like they were settling because they knew they could get what they considered to be sufficient, but there was no future.
Correct. They could settle. I mean, and sometimes in the present, especially when you're in no man's land, we have this way of looking back at the past. I mean, humans automatically do this anyway. We kind of overlook some of the hurts of the past. I mean, really for survival and to move forward. So here's what they saw in the wilderness, though, and I promise this is going to build up somewhere. While they were in the land in between, so they leave the Red Sea, they're walking through the wilderness. They're going the long way. It's supposed to take, 40, 50 days? It takes 40 years. They see three big things. Number one, they do see God's power in the wilderness. That is certainly where they learned what He could do. There's a great story. It's in Exodus 17. You know the story. It's where they are fighting the Amalekites. And as long as Moses has the staff in the air and raises his hand, Joshua, who's leading the children of Israel in war, they're winning. As soon as Moses' hands go down, they start losing. And so finally, Aaron and Hur are there, and they realize, golly, this is not on us. This is something having to do with God's power and that staff that turned the Nile to blood, that initiated, orchestrated all of the plagues that split the Red Sea. They start seeing all that, and so they just prop Moses' hands up and realize God's power shows up, we win, we're victorious. His power doesn't show up, we lose. And there are these stories all throughout the wilderness where they encounter God's power. And when you're in the land in between, there are going to be stories where you clearly see God move in a strong way on your behalf. Second thing, in the wilderness, they also encountered God's provision, meaning every single one of their physical needs were met in that land in between. So they get there. There are multiple episodes in the wilderness where they did not have anything to drink. In fact, one of the first miracles inside the Red Sea was water from a rock. Moses taps the rock, Exodus 17, water comes out. There's another episode, even before that, where Exodus 15, there's water in the wilderness. They need it to drink. They're in the desert. It's not drinkable. He makes bitter water where they can drink it. And the first revelation inside of the wilderness is that I'm the Lord God, your healer. This is all occurring in the land in between. You might remember this. Every single morning they wake up, starting in about Exodus 16, and food's just right there on the ground. You just walk out, and it's just, you don't have to go to, well, they didn't have a convenience store, but they don't have to go hunt it. They don't have to plant it and then wait and cultivate while it grows and then go harvest it. It's just there. God's provision shows up. There's a great phrase in Deuteronomy 29. Moses says, hey, the whole 40 years that you were walking in this wilderness, your clothes didn't wear out, your shoes didn't wear out. I don't even know what that means in the sense that kids were growing, right? There were children who left that were, it would be a thing for like my clothes to last for 40 years. I'm done growing.
Right.
Except for gain some weight. But if my youngest son, Salter, if his clothes last for 40 years, I mean, goodness, he changes his shoe size every couple months, sometimes every month. He's getting taller. So. I mean, were the clothes stretching, or were we just handing these down? Or I don't know that we could hand them down, because where are all the extra adult clothes coming from as they age up? Like everybody's got it. So what in the world? There's all this provision. So in the land in between, and if you feel like you're in this stuck space, you look around and you think, well, what's here? Well, God's power's here. God's provision's here. And all that happens. Number 3 thing you see in the wilderness is God's presence is there. This was where Exodus 15, and then you see it all throughout the book of Exodus, all throughout Numbers, Deuteronomy. This is the place where God began appearing to them as a fire at night that kept them warm, as a cloud of smoke by day that protected them from the sun. This is what they followed, was the presence. And sometimes we forget, it's not to make the wilderness and this liminal space this magical place. It's just saying, hey, if you're stuck in a middle right now, so you think about tangibly what that might look like for person listening. It could be you've just left a relationship. Maybe you didn't even want to leave the relationship. You were the left, not the leaver. And now you're in this middle space. Or you lost a job. They hired somebody else. They downsized, right-sized, whatever. You're stuck. Relationships with friends. Sometimes those move on, those shift, those change. Sometimes family, they disown you because you have a different political point of view. You have a different point of view about some of the hot topics of the day. Gender and identity and anything. It's, people can get so cross with each other for numerous things. And then you find yourself in the middle for whatever reason. You look around, you'll see God's power, you'll see God's provision, you'll see God's presence. And the issue with it is you can become so enamored with where you are that it almost becomes easy to stay there and to root down and to just get stuck. Now, for sure, you look around and the wilderness, the land in between, the liminal space, it is this area where God does want you to encounter him. You do have this experience of his presence, not just information, not just gathering facts and data about God, but there's this encounter that's ongoing, that's relational. I mean, you think through all the wilderness stories, how many ways he revealed himself to them. He was fighting on their behalf. He was healing all of their sicknesses and illnesses and diseases. He was providing for them. He was leading them. He was there. They could see tangibly fire, smoke. They set up the tabernacle, fire falls from heaven and then consumes the sacrifices. I mean, this is it's so incredible that even though it was not God's final destination for them, there were 2.5 tribes. Even if you read a commentary or you pick up a study Bible, they call them the Transjordan tribes. 2.5 tribes decided not to go into the promised land. They decided to stay in the wilderness. They were so enamored with the land in between, and they got so cozy in the land in between. They got so looking around, hey, this isn't so bad. This is way better than slavery. That they even agreed to Moses and Joshua that when the children of Israel went into the promised land, they would go in and fight and make sure they cleared it out for them so that they could possess it, but then they would come back to their place on the other side, the near side of the Jordan River. You had to cross into the Jordan River to go into the promised land. So they would cross, go fight, and then cross back, go back to the land in between where they came from.
It's such a reflection of the modern Christian, right? We finally get plugged into a church. We go. It's good for us. We get some stuff out of it. But at the end of the day, it's all about fulfilling just us and just our needs. When if we just take that extra step to trust and listen and follow the guidance of the Holy Spirit, that it becomes so much more than just us and our family, but yet it becomes the kingdom as it should be, just so much similar to the promised land and seeing the future of God's people and what can be done.
I see people that are, get to, let's say midlife, 40, 50. You think like where I'm at right now, I've got to take Salter to soccer practice. We've got one kid that's in football and other sports, one kid that's in track. For the most part, though, the getting on the mat and wrestling with the kids to prepare them for a match, the going outside, throwing a ball, shooting basketball to prep for something, that's in the rearview mirror. Now I've still got some. So Salter and I go kick the soccer ball and that sort of thing, and I'll take him to practice. You still have some days of throwing balls, but at some point, like that's done, and you don't ever know when it's done.
Right, you never know the last day.
Like you don't, and that's not like doom and gloom, like something's going to happen. I mean, like that's just, and it's easy to when there should be a next chapter after that, even to just settle in and go, okay, I'm done. And maybe right now is going through something. So does that make sense? Like it's just progression of moving forward. Like there's still more of the promise out there. Not that you're in a wilderness right now, or not that I'm in a wilderness, but it's just there's this progression. And I think, if you look at where the children of Israel were in that story, in the wilderness, God did want to educate them. Now, not just informationally, like I'm all for books and information,
right,
but he was wanting to educate them in real world experience, real time. He wanted to equip them so they would know how to lean on him and the access they had to this incredible power and provision and presence. And then he wanted to empower them to move forward, to continue growing and take charge of the destiny that he laid out for them. And I think in a real sense, it probably took going through that season to acquire all of that. Some things could only be acquired, in other words, in the wilderness. You think about Moses, 40 years in the wilderness. There are things he learned there that I don't know that he could have acquired any other way other than walking with God in the wilderness for 40 years before he went to the wilderness, after he fled early in the book of Exodus. He was arrogant, pompous, quick-tempered. You still see some of that come out later in life, but goodness, God refined him during that season. You think about the story of Abraham. God refines him walking through a wilderness. David runs for his life for years. There's this long stretch of time between the time David is coronated as king, and then years before that, he was actually anointed as king. He spent this big gap between those two, really running for his life and learning all about the presence, provision, power of God. And he still didn't get it completely right when he assumed the kingship. The scripture says that Jesus, after his baptism, he went into the wilderness. Literally, the quote is, led into the wilderness. And then after that wilderness experience, he emerged with power. So there's something about that land in between. If we look around and don't waste it, yet at the same time, I think the tension is you don't want to do what those 2.5 tribes did and get stuck there either. You can't, maybe to say it another way, see if this makes sense. You can't stay in the land in between and step into the promised land at the same time. You can't grab hold of your future if you're clinging with 2 handfuls of the past or the present. At some point, you have to make the leap and move forward. You've got to cross this. There's a word, a threshold. It's sometimes when you get married, you go over the threshold. Like you go to the hotel room or something, you carry them over the threshold. You have at houses, like at the front door, like it's even called, like the casing of the door on an interior door just goes up the sides and over the top. But at the front door and at the back door, when you're leaving or entering the house, there's that bottom of it. It's called it.
The threshold.
It's called a threshold.
Yeah.
You got to cross something. Like you can't be in the house and out of the house at the same time. It's almost like it's a necessary shift from one to the other. And I think the whole previous episode, we were talking about, hey, look, it's best time to move forward is now. Sometimes you got to make that shift, and it's easy to just get kind of stuck where you are at any season of life. And sometimes what should be a season of life, it kind of becomes life, if that makes sense. A season in the wilderness, because you look at it, the wilderness wasn't so bad.
No.
Right?
Right. Well, and so here's kind of what you've put into my head with this is, you hear the good old days. People talk about the good old days, and we get caught in the middle, like what you're saying, in the wilderness. And the wilderness may be giving us enough, but it's not what it once was. We still see it as it originally was, but just like with the way that we look at, people get upset with schools, the things that aren't taught in schools that used to be the respect that kids used to give parents because they're not being taught. So many times we get in that spot to where we think that it's going to come back around, or maybe the stuff around us is what it once was, but it's really not. And it's like, hey, you've been there long enough. And the only way to see things change is for you to actually move forward and probably be a part of that change. Help make something happen.
Yeah. Yes. I see what you're saying on that. It's easy to you imagine if you are those Transjordan tribes and you go through this wilderness for 40 years and you've seen God's power, you've seen God's provision, you've seen God's presence walking with you, and then you see the promised land, and it's full of bounty, but then also like what we were in, it wasn't so bad. It's not like I've heard this phrase before, we even wrote about it, called the messy middle, where you've made progress, but you're not yet to your goal. And it seems like there's so far to go. And so you kind of get disillusioned with how much there's yet to do, yet you look back and you go, man, I've made so much gain, but I'm kind of just, I'm here today we're not talking about like, I'm just here in this messy middle. Like I'm here in this gap. Like sometimes we're in a space and we need to actively move forward. You need to cross that transition. You need to step over. And we'll talk in another episode about some of the things that might keep us where we are. I think the difference here's what you might say. There could be a difference between procrastination and just divine postponement. Okay, so sometimes divine postponement is that season where God is preparing you. It's a season of planning that's intentional. It's a season of it's presence driven, where you're learning about His presence. You're learning about His power. You're learning about His provision. But if it becomes a chosen place where you've decided to be comfortable and just pause and stay by your personal choice, aside from His leading, it may be that it just may be. It's not a formula, but it may be that you're postponing crossing that threshold and stepping into the promised land of whatever it is that the Lord has for you. And remember, in the story, when they cross in the promised land, there's still a lot of growth that happens. It's not like, oh, we're here, we made it, we're done. It's still going to be an unfolding story, but it's a shift into a new season. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And it's you take the step to the promised land. You see what's already happened, what's currently happening, but something about taking that step shows you, hey, there's even more potential. I've gone this far, why not keep going?
That's it. It's a conscious. Now here's what happens if you step forward, and we can probably start summarizing it right here. The thing that might keep us out sometimes from moving forward is it's scary. You get imposter syndrome. You're like, I don't know what's going to happen. It's, am I worthy? Oh, can I do it? By the time you get to the middle of your life, man, you don't even have to get to the middle of your life. You get to your 20s. You've got enough failures to where you're like, I don't know. Like, can I move forward? Can I do this thing? Can I learn that skill? Can I start this business? Can I implement this idea? Can I start that relationship? Can I get involved in this area? Can I pursue this call? Can I, you fill in all these gaps of whatever it is that's forward. Here's what happens when you cross over. The unknown changes a little bit, and you find that the same three elements that were in the wilderness are actually there in the promised land, or wherever it is God's leading you.
Right.
So you cross that threshold, you still find that God's power is still there. Now, His power for sure looks different. So when you cross, we're not raising Moses' arms anymore. We walk around the wall of Jericho, and then we shout, and the walls come down. And a series of all of these other events that we see. His power is still there. It's just the encounter is different.
Well, the great thing that I think that you and I have both seen in years upon years of ministry is that at some point you've surrounded yourself with a lot of great people. You've got the connections, you have the opportunities potentially, but it still comes down to whether you do something. You have to do something, whether minuscule or grand. You got to do something. You have to make a move, period.
You got to make that walk.
That's right.
You got to, because those were, you forget, those are great people that had seen God's power, His provision, and His presence that stayed on the other side of the Jordan River. So you cross, you see His power, it's there. You also see His provision. Now it shifts too, and it can be a little bit scary. You shift, and all of a sudden, I've experienced this. Hey, old income stream is gone overnight. Or you shift and there's a relationship that's gone. Maybe even not because of something that you did wrong. You cross over some of the things that were provision for you at some point in the past, shift. Well, for the children of Israel, they cross over, the manna stops. Literally, the day they cross the Jordan, the scripture says the manna, where you just wake up, you walk outside, and you get enough daily bread for today, except for on the day before the Sabbath, you get 2 days worth. It's done. Yet at the same time, that's the season when they began that day reaping and eating of the bounty of the land. Trees they didn't plant. Vineyards they didn't set up and create on their own, from food that they weren't the ones that tended and cultivated. Yet it's all there. So the power's there, the provision's there. It all looks different. And then of course God's presence is there. It goes with you each step. Make sense?
And with his presence, that purpose continues to grow. You stay in the old spot, you stay in the middle, you stay in the wilderness, and it's like, what am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing. I mean, I've got what I need, but what am I doing?
I mean, the danger is, I think, of staying in the liminal space, in the land in between is, and for sure, I mean, I hope what you're hearing is sometimes, it's not even sometimes. I mean, going through a threshold, over a threshold, across it, the land in between is sometimes often necessary. Like you don't go from one place to the other without crossing that threshold. And sometimes it's a long season in which God's educating you, equipping you, empowering you, all of that. If you stay, though, at some point, you just begin serving a schedule rather than walking in who you're designed to be, or you serve a process of just the daily grind and your agenda rather than, I mean, maybe some good stuff even. But you serve that process instead of walking out and fulfilling your purpose. And that's ultimately part of the shift.
Eventually you feel like a robot. You feel like a worker ant. You know, you're just following the line, doing what you've always done.
This is what I do because this is what I do because this is what man. I did forget at the whole beginning of this, I forgot to say, man, cue the music. But, man, I think it's time, like if we haven't already started playing it, cue it and land it and cross over. We'll be back in another episode and we'll talk a little bit about, okay, let's talk about some of the mindset that you need to move forward. And sometimes why do we say stuck? In the meantime, here's the prayer is that the Lord would bless you, He'd keep you, He'd be gracious to you, shine favor on you. And may you, wherever you are, if you're walking into that promise or if you somehow feel stuck in the land in between, or you're needing a little bit of navigational help, may you look around and may you see very clearly His power. May you see the provision that He's outlined and laid out for you. Sometimes it looks so different for all of us. May you experience His presence, and may you have this confidence that wherever you go, He's already said this, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. Nothing can separate you from my love. May you keep crossing forward from the past through the present into the purpose that He has for you. Grace and peace.